screeches sound huge by themselves, but then completely disappear when the drop hits. This is probably why. Most people keep adding more distortion, more layers, more noise, but the screech still feels weak because the problem is not always the sound. A lot of the time, it's the movement. So I'm gonna build a screech from scratch inside Serum 2, and I'll show you the parts that actually make it cut through. I'm starting from the init preset. First, I'm going into the analog wavetables and choosing this one right here. Then I push the wavetable position all the way up. After that, I put the unison all the way to 16 voices and push the detune pretty hard. At this point, it already sounds wide. But wide doesn't mean aggressive. It still needs movement. So first, I create an LFO in envelope mode going from low to high. Then I map that LFO to the coarse pitch of Oscillator A. That fast pitch movement gives the screech a much sharper attack, so it doesn't feel flat from the start. Now I turn on the noise oscillator and bring the level all the way down. I don't actually want to hear the noise itself. I change the warp mode to FM from noise, and then I map that same LFO to the FM amount too. Not too much. This is where the screech starts getting that dirty edge. Now I go into the effects section. First, I add a filter in ring modulation mode. I lower the cutoff a little bit, increase the resonance, add some drive, and keep the mix around 60%. This adds that metallic texture without completely destroying the sound. After that, I add tube distortion. I push the distortion pretty hard, but I also use the filter inside the distortion as a high pass. And this part is important. The screech should not fight the kick and bass in the low end, so I'm cutting the lows and making the distortion focus more on the mids and highs. Then I map the same LFO to the distortion filter frequency. Now the distortion is moving too, and this is exactly what most screeches are missing. Movement, not just distortion. After that, I add multi-band compression to tighten everything and bring the mids and highs forward. Then I add hall reverb, but I cut some of the lows so the reverb doesn't make the mix muddy. Then I add ping pong delay, also cutting the lows and highs and keeping the mix controlled. I don't want the screech to sound washed out. I just want it to feel wider and bigger. Then I add utility. I keep the bass mono and use a high pass around 200 Hz. Again, the screech needs to sit above the low end, not fight it. Now I create one more LFO. This one moves much slower. And inside the matrix, I map it slightly to the main tuning. Just a little bit. This gives the screech that slow pitch movement that makes it feel alive inside the drop instead of sounding static the whole time. With movement, it actually starts cutting through the mix. That's the real difference. Most weak screeches don't need more distortion. They need better movement. Once the screech is ready, I use my screech generator to quickly turn it into patterns for the drop. That way, I can test different rhythms really fast without drawing everything manually from zero. And honestly, this is the whole idea behind KROSPER. Not random sounds everywhere. A system that helps you build harder drops faster. If you want to check out the Screech presets, generators, racks, and tools I use for this kind of sound design, everything is below. Now, let's hear it in the drop. That's how you turn sound into power.